when is perimenopause and when?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the TRT and Hormone Optimization YouTube channel. I'm Angie Bossa. Today's host, my gorgeous wife, Angie Bossa, who will be interviewing the lovely and very knowledgeable Victoria Felkar on women's HRT and hormones across the lifespan. How are you, Victoria?
I'm very well.
Hey.
Welcome to this channel. I am Dr. Steven de Vos, the lifting dermatologist, and this is my partner Angie Bossa. If you want to learn more about the most cutting-edge science-based information in the world of hormone optimization, please like and subscribe. I also invite you to join my other YouTube channel, The Lifting Dermatologist. The link you can find in the description of this video.
The thing that I just wanted to hit home or to start with today was when is perimenopause and when is menopause? Because I think a lot of people, they confuse it, or they don't know exactly when it is, and it's like I think that's plays a big role of deciding which hormones they're going to choose or what they think they need to supplement at the time.
Yeah, and that's a great place to start. So typically, I think, before we can get into even what is perimenopause, we actually have to go one step back and just be like, what is the typical women's reproductive life cycle? Because there are some distinct features of a woman's reproductive life cycle that we can use to begin to kind of tease apart and build that foundation for talking about hormone replacement, hormone optimization. I always word those actually two different things, and you're actually going to probably hear me say more than once today, OHT, or ovarian hormone therapy, because that's actually a different type of idea, and one that I typically ascribe to for women throughout their reproductive life cycle. So there are so many myths and misconceptions around women's health overall, just so many. And I find that gets really problematic when we're then starting to manipulate hormones, because we're manipulating them with this kind of sometimes completely wrong knowledge, or sometimes half right, half wrong. And that's going to change how somebody actually responds to certain protocols, certain even route of entry into the body, certain doses. And so, yeah, it's there's just so much crap out there. So I guess maybe let's just start with what is perimenopause. So perimenopause refers to the long and changing time in a woman's reproductive life cycle where they are getting to the point of no flow. So menopause is 1 year after a woman's last period. Perimenopause is the time leading into that. It's that transition. Very similar to when a girl transitions into puberty. There's this transitionary period of time that's going to be different between individuals, and it's also going to be influenced by numerous different factors. So puberty is the set period of time that we see these certain types of, I don't even like calling them symptoms, but they are certain physical manifestations of hormone levels being here, there, and everywhere. And then they are now in their reproductive prime. After their reproductive prime, they're slowly transitioning into perimenopause. And then finally, the last stop is menopause. So perimenopause, it is this transitionary period into menopause. And it can sometimes be anywhere between 6 to 11 years. Sometimes women experience longer transitionary periods, and some women experience shorter transitionary periods. And there's just not enough research to say why some women experience a longer one and why some experience a shorter one. Same thing with the age of onset. So research has shown that some women can begin it as early as 35 and others as late as about 58, 59. And so again, there's really a big misunderstanding about this period of time. I think in pop culture, we refer to when women have the night sweats and the heavy flow and just being moody as being menopause. But the reality is that's actually perimenopause. That's this transitionary period. And so that tumultuous, crazy time is perimenopause, so pre-menopause. and that there are many reasons too beyond. So when we talk about this, I think it's important to make the distinction between when somebody goes into pharmaceutical or chemically induced perimenopause and menopause, when somebody goes through functional. So for example, having a hysterectomy, that is going to change how you are creating your reproductive hormones, as well as then just like I hate the word, but natural life cycle, which means that you don't have any influencing agents and you're going through this transitionary period. So there does need to be that distinction, because that is ultimately going to influence how somebody approaches any type of synthetic hormone use or natural hormone use that's just exogenous. So one of the things that I guess some of the hallmark signs of sorts is that an individual typically is going to experience more PMS or premenstrual symptoms, whether that is mood disturbances or breast pain, night sweats, migraine, especially that premenstrual migraine, sleep issues, fatigue. And so it's also been found, there's a few pretty good researchers in this area that are more on like the clinical side that have shown that women were more likely to experience flooding. So heavy periods just before they started then skipping periods. And so that's one sign that women can start to look out for, is that if they're starting to get more incidents of flooding and then all of a sudden they're starting to skip their periods, well, that's a sign that you're in perimenopause. I recommend though that women, whether they're on HRT, off HRT, whether they are in the reproductive prime or going through perimenopause, to track your menstrual cycle, because this is actually your own data that then you can apply to begin to tease apart where you are in your reproductive life cycle. Sometimes when you're in the thick of it, you don't notice these things, and you might think that a one-off is just that. It's just a one-off. Hey, I just flooded this month. But then when we see these patterns emerge, they can become really important clinical tools. So another sign too. So we have the heavy flow. There are also is a bleeding at shorter intervals. So some women will experience, if they typically experience, say, a 4-week or let's say a 28 to 32 day period, and then all of a sudden they're having shorter intervals. So maybe 3 weeks. Continual spotting or flow. So some women will have really heavy spotting, and then they'll have 2 weeks later, they'll actually have more of a really heavy flood period. And then 2 weeks later, they'll start spotting again. And that cramping is another sign as well. And in the past, and this is quite controversial, but in the past it was believed, and I think that the general ethos is still, even though I would argue that it's incorrect, is that perimenopause is a sign of low estrogen. I would argue it's actually a sign of high estrogen. When we look at all of these different symptoms, they are associated with a high estrogenic state. Cramping is associated with a high estrogenic state. Now, night sweats is a really curious one, and it's actually really complicated, because what the theory is that I find very interesting is that it is a sign that your body is in a high state of estrogen. Then when your estrogen starts to drop, it's almost like you're having these withdrawal, because your brain has already made these chemical signals as a response to having high estrogenic states. And so how we address that with HRT is a little bit different, but I can get into that a little bit more. Maybe after I go through some of the more stuff that research has shown with perimenopause. Because some of the other stuff, it's really interesting because, I mean, swollen breasts are typically associated with like a PMS trait. And this can happen throughout your reproductive life cycle. So even in your prime. Now, what research is showing though, is that front of breast soreness that lasts more for a couple of days actually is associated with high estrogen. And there's been a lot of research that's looked at the rate of this specific type of breast soreness in perimenopause. So that couldn't happen if estrogen was low. That's just not something we associate with it. Memory and forgetfulness. So high estrogen levels in perimenopause, and kind of the stress brain also fog associated with going through this change. You know, a lot of women questioning like, what's going on with my body? I need to fix this. I don't like this. You're now making more cortisol. Other stress levels can go higher as well. So it is also a sign of, though, that brain fog, high estrogen. And then there is also this it was a newer study, I want to say it was maybe 2016, that came out suggesting that women who have increased perimenopausal PMS are more likely to have a difficult time at that end of perimenopause, early menopause, with hot flushes or hot flashes. And this is because, as I mentioned, that due to the high estrogen in perimenopause, the brain kind of overreacts to now low estrogen in menopause. And so I think those are just some of the different kind of markers, the ones that I would say are a little bit more like hallmarkish, but it definitely is a process that is going to be different for everybody.